Sonic the Hedgehog is such a redundant thing to talk about on YouTube. I mean, it really puts a chokehold on some of the ideas for videos I have. Like, basically every possible Sonic video that could ever be made has already been made. And I do mean every.
McChicken. I'd hit it. Yeah.
I mean, we've reached the point where jokes about how overused certain phrases are in Sonic videos are overused. But did you know that Sonic 3 was actually only one half of the experience?
And would you listen to that music? I mean, it's not bad, but there's shit in a Sonic game. I'm supposed to be going fast. The annoying part is the radar is worse than it was in the first game because it only tracks one emerald at a time now.
Guns, seriously, and swear words in a Sonic game? Well, the quality of the content is...
Oh my god, shut up! Can we please just shut the fuck up about Sonic the Hedgehog for one goddamn minute?
Sonic had a rough...
No!
It's just no one is gonna listen to me say, yeah, Unleashed daytime stages are pretty fun, but the WillRock just drags the game down, and go, huh, yeah. They're gonna say, wow, well done, John, you're like the 87th person to say that today. And also, I was fibbing anyway, I actually like the WillRock. What? Oh, everyone likes the WillRock now? Fuck's sake. The point is, it feels like the consensus has been reached, more or less, for every title in the series. And yet, I want to talk about Sonic! I like Sonic! I want to fucking talk about Sonic. It's not my fault I was born in 2002 and my prefrontal cortex only just started letting me form my own opinions last week, after everyone and their brother has already cream-pied all up in Sonic's boy hole, leaving him quivering in the... Sorry, that started spiraling into a strange place. All of this to say, I want to make a video about the classic Sonic games. Because I like them. And I don't care if I just regurgitate the collective opinions of everyone else. I don't care if I can't come up with a single intelligent insight in the next 2 hours. And I know that you don't care either. I stapled the Animal Crossing video together out of Reddit posts, and you acted like I was the fucking Animal Crossing messiah who had descended down from the heavens to preach the sins of New Horizons. I'm just kidding. But I did constantly take breaks during the production of that video to stare at the sky and wonder what the point was in reiterating what I thought everybody already knew. And despite that being my most popular and well-received video of all time, it's still something I struggle with constantly. But with that baggage out of the way, Sonic. He was Nintendo's answer to Mario. Wait, what? Altered Beast just wasn't fucking doing it, man. If Sega wanted a proper shot at knocking Nintendo off its high horse, it'd need a mascot who could really tango with the plumber. Oh boy, I get to explain how Sonic came to be. I've heard so many others go over this before that I probably don't even have to script it. So, Sega held an internal design and so, Sonic the Hedgehog was born. A couple of revisions later, he was given Sega blue fur and shoes that were inspired by the ones Michael Jackson wore in the music video to Bad, except coloured like Santa Claus. And his trademark attitude was apparently inspired by Bill Clinton.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The Sonic team was comprised of a few people, but the guys I want to focus on are Yuji Naka, the wizard who built Sonic's insane engine, Hirokazu Yasuhara, the guy who created levels that made it sing, and Naoto Oshima, the man whose brain spawned all this wacky shit in the first place. I think a key thing to consider when trying to analyse the original Sonic is the time period in which it came out. Think of the 2D platformers that preceded it, games like Super Mario Bros., Castlevania, Mega Man. Though they all had their own control quirks, they had a similar rigidity in their level design. It was pretty much always a linear path from point A to point B, with the fun being the challenge in the obstacles and enemies you would need to overcome, rather than the specific mechanics of the character and how you could use them to interact with the environment. Simon and Trevor Belmont can whip certain walls and climb upstairs. They're effectively regular humans with a particularly strong throwing arm. Mega Man only has a basic jump and slide. Any additional movement options are tool assisted, be it his dog rush or these poxy little things. Sonic's progression, however, is fueled purely by the terrain itself, as we'll get into later. It cannot be overstated how hard Sonic blew the lid off stage traversal in 2D platformers. It cannot be overstated how hard Sonic blew. Ugh. With so many new ideas being presented, extra attention had to be paid by the developers into crafting an opening level that eased players into Sonic's unique gameplay. This might seem a little trite, but let's do an exercise where we pretend we've never played this shit before and see how successful the game is in teaching the player its rules. As you begin the game and enter Green Hill Zone, the first thing you see is these things. That looks like a row of coins to me, yoink. And then we're greeted with a familiar sight. An enemy charging towards us, and a higher ledge with some kind of item in a box. You either react in time to escape, jump on the fucker out of Mario instincts, or eat shit and take damage. But no matter what happens, you learn something. If the motor bug hits you, you'll probably drop those rings you previously collected. With them scattering out onto the field, you'll naturally be inclined to try and collect them again. With the lack of a visible health bar, this is where you figure out that rings are your life insurance, the equivalent of a super mushroom. And if you escape, you'll be free to investigate this strange television. Jumping on it will give you an extra 10 rings, as well as hopefully cluing you in on how to deal with badniks if you didn't already try that. And from there the level plays it pretty straight. You know the rings are cool now, so the designers can use them to guide your actions. This trail over the bridge makes you jump to collect them, which will help you avoid this chopper so that when you come to a bridge a few seconds later without any rings hovering over it, you're already aware of the danger. There's a few platforms and rocks to jump over, the amount of enemies ramps up slightly, and speaking of ramps, there's a few ramps which are kind of a drag to run up, to be honest. Like, why do they make them so slow to scale? I thought this game was supposed to be fast. But then you reach this thing, and interrogating it with your spin jump like you have everything else so far, you'll find yourself sprung into the air where you can see a platform leading to the rest of the level. So you reach it and then, oh fuck! But instead of dying via bottomless pit, you land at the bottom of the screen, revealing the big twist Sonic plays on the genre. Multiple pathways. Again, this sounds obvious, but this is an idea not many games had played around with at the time, at least not in this front and center route variety way. At this point you'll probably notice another one of those springs, which just barely doesn't bounce you high enough to reach that top pathway again. But you also may have noticed a ramp leading up to your left. We came from above, so what's over there? Hey, another spring. And this one does lead you back to the first one, giving you another opportunity to reach the upper pathway. You'll quickly come across more breakable cliffs, but hopefully now you're wise to the game's antics and passing them leads you to your first checkpoint, as well as the introduction of an even higher pathway. This one is mostly floating segmented platforms and as such is the hardest one to stay on, but you're rewarded with a ring box, a new item, the shield, allowing you to take an extra hit without losing your rings, and if you follow through all the way to the end of the platforms you'll reach the peak of the act, where there's a nice little trail of
20 rings waiting for you to grab them.
This is contrasted by the 18 rings and 5 rings that are sitting on the other respective tiers of this
skip was insane!
Hey, oi! Shut up, man. Interestingly though, if you were to follow through after falling down to the bottom level at the initial splitting off point, you'd soon come across 3 ring boxes and an invincibility power up. Taking any of the main 3 paths will net you a similar amount of rings by the end of the act, enough to grant you an extra life. So why even bother leaving the bottom path? Well, the level design on the upper paths is better suited to maintaining your speed and flow. Like the top path runs against the open sky where you can jump off platforms and soar freely through the air with the occasional badnik to bounce off of. The middle path is mostly downward slopes, free tickets to bursts of momentum letting you clear the upcoming loop-de-loop without even thinking. The bottom path, however, has a lot of dangerous spike platforms as well as raised ledges. It feels just a little more oppressive. And when you make it to the loop, a new player might not have the same amount of speed they would if they had come down from the middle path slopes, so they have to actually think and figure out how to clear the loop. Which brings me to the key mechanic that truly sets Sonic apart. Sing it with me now. Momentum-based physics! You know how when you're chasing women alone at night, sometimes you'll go so fast that you lose control and stack it? Well, that's because your body built up too much momentum. Part of what made Super Mario Bros. So revolutionary was that Mario was programmed to build up momentum the longer he ran, allowing the player to make longer jumps. Apart from that application though, this really wasn't used for much. Likewise, Super Mario 3 introduced slopes, which you could slide down on your bum. It was novel, but again, nothing much is really done with it other than being an alternative means to defeat enemies. Since Yuji Naka said that he enjoyed speedrunning the old Marios, it's clear that these mechanics laid the groundwork for Sonic, whose gameplay extrapolates on them tenfold and brings them to the forefront of the experience, with levels that are essentially playgrounds for a character whose physics are fine-tuned to a T. You run slower up inclines and faster down declines, and pressing down to roll further intensifies that dichotomy. And there's no limit to your momentum, even the smallest notches in geometry can affect your speed and jump trajectory, meaning that maintaining your speed is a matter of how skillfully you can pilot Sonic through the environment. This extra depth is why so many people struggle with Sonic but can handle simpler, more fundamental titles like Mario or Mega Man. To get good at Sonic is to understand how its physics work. There's a real learning curve to it. As a kid I was terrible at the classic Sonic games because I didn't really get it. Now I can beat them with my eyes closed while being hung upside down and having my arse cheeks flayed. Back to the loop-de-loop. It's the first part of the terrain you can't just brute force. No matter how much you try, you will not clear it by just holding right. You have to get a running start, which means you have to engage with the game's inherent physics to progress. This doesn't mean that they will suddenly click straight away, but it's the first step to understanding how Sonic ticks. And all of this is happening in the first, minute or so of gameplay. Going back to the large structure, this thing served as a showcase of the game's true potential. It's not really something that most people will bat an eye at now, but the enclosed tunnels that rocket you onto a slope and into the air and through that field of rings was considered a real spectacle, a demonstration of the impressive scope of the game's expansive level design. Afterwards, it's just a quick jog to the end of the act. So what have we learned? Well, we've begun to get a feel for the game. A platformer as relatively intricate as Sonic isn't something you can immediately teach, but the game does a pretty solid job at least introducing its concepts, from the basic stuff like enemies in rings to more complex aspects like the branching level design and robust physics. Actually, if you really comb over the act, you'll find that the total number of rings throughout every route is just barely enough to get 2 extra lives, so to me it seems like the game is gesturing towards exploration of a whole level, instead of prescribing an arbitrary good route and bad route. This kind of thing will be important to bear in mind when we look at this game's 2 follow-ups, as well as preceding zones in this game. Green Hill Act 2 has some pretty interesting stuff in it that continues trying to bash knowledge into a newcomer's mind, while also trying to encourage more experienced players to explore. You actually start on an upper path, but shortly you'll come to this drop where a swing carries you over to the rest of the level. But it's timed to be out of reach when it comes on screen, and as such a lot of players will fall down here. This is where you'll meet a slope so steep that it's basically a wall. Like the loop-de-loop, there's no way you can scale that thing by just holding right, so intuitive players will use what they learned in Act 1 to get a running start and get up there. But if a new player is still struggling to grasp the mechanics, they can poke around a bit to their left and find a speed shoes box which will give them a much easier time making it up the slope. But that's not all. There's another pathway down here, and it's pretty perilous. Swinging platforms over a spike chasm, a bunch of neutrons, and some troll red springs. And not a damn ring in sight. It seems like a harsher version of the bottom pathway in Act 1, right? A punishment for not staying on the top path. But that's just the thing. You choose to come down here. It's not somewhere you end up directly after failing a skill check. And it all comes together at the end of the stretch, where a red spring leads you right on top of a loop-de-loop which houses an extra life and a bunch of rangs. You know what the cherry on top of this is though? With the aforementioned speed shoes, you can quickly get out of the pit and make it to the loop on the ground level, where you can use the physics and extra speed to trick yourself onto the top of the loop without needing to go through the bottom path. Ah, fuck off! But hey, multiple solutions to this puzzle. It's as if they knew that good players would just mindlessly hemorrhage their way through the game without thinking, so they snuck in subtle bait like this to stop them autopiloting. Hell, if you're really fucking big brain, there's actually a third way to get this extra life without needing the speed shoes or the red spring. The extra life basically serves as a reward for the player applying Sonic's physics creatively. Although I will admit, the out-of-the-way paths kind of derail after this. After the extra life loop, there's a linear platforming challenge that will filter literally every single person playing for the first time, and then you reach another collapsible bit of land which seems to lead into another tough spark trap.
Oh, thanks, mate.
What the fuck? That was perhaps the most treacherous thing in the game so far, and all I get is 10 rings? What would have happened if I just kept going?
You fucking what?
Oh yeah. If you can finish the act with 50 rings, you can get special needs. These stages get a lot of hate, but personally, I've always quite liked them. Everyone's always like, they're not skill-based enough. Well, maybe that's the point. As someone who's played this game enough times to warrant an autism diagnosis, I like the fact that there's still a part of it I'm not 100% entirely sure I will clear effortlessly every time. It's always fun trying to finagle your way through small crevices and into the emerald. Plus these aesthetics are awesome with the fish and shit in the background. I mean, what? Does Sonic take... drugs? The problem is though, there's only 6 Chaos Emeralds in this game, so you can't turn into Supersonic and instead you're just carrying around these gay anal beads. Act 3 has a similar low path to the start of Act 2, but it's kinda bullshit because you're supposed to ignore the spring leading up to the main path now and jump past these spikes to claim your prize. Alright guys, now you're just being obtuse. I'll just jump over these spikes as well, shall I? Yeah, didn't think so. Whatever. Some questionable decisions aside though, Green Hill Zone is an amazing introduction stage. It continuously gives value to all of its routes with no inherent right or wrong answer, meaning it's up to the player how they wish to proceed, accommodating both experienced and new players alike. It does a great job getting you acclimated to how Sonic controls, and no matter what kind of twists and turns you take, you'll often get rewarded for your curiosity or skill. Even that section at the end of Green Hill Act 2 I poked fun at, I can at least think of some application for. Say you eat ass at the end of this section, which is notoriously tough for newcomers, and lose the rings you'd been collecting for the special zone. If you follow the bottom path, you'll get a shield for protection just before a few obstacles that lead to a ring box, which should hopefully push you over 50 rings. The question is though, does Sonic 1 stick to this philosophy? And this is where things start to unfortunately unravel. But first we have to... oh shit.
Come on, then, you cunt.
What's your problem?
You cunt.
Where are you, mate?
Fucking knobbhead.
What?
You got a problem? Do you know who I am?
What are you on about problem?
Muppet.
What do you mean what a problem?
You fucking muppet. There's no need for that.
What?
You cunt.
What?
fucking hanging about like that?
I pulled, I went round, yeah, and then you started fucking blocking
Yeah.
in. Yeah?
What's your problem? You're not good.
You got a problem, haven't
Yeah,
you?
you, yeah.
Yeah, you have.
Get your fucking helmet off then.
Oh, grow up, you fucking fool.
Do you know
Yeah?
who I am?
You what?
Do you know who I am?
Do I care?
Well, you will do when you pull up.
Come on, who are you then?
Ronnie Pickering.
Who?
Ronnie Pickering.
Who?
Ronnie Pickering.
Who the fuck's that?
Yeah, me.
No, wow,
Yeah.
oh, brilliant.
Fucking found out then.
Well, go on then, fuck off then.
You fuck off.
Next up is Marble Zone. How did they follow up Green Hill, a zone rife with sprawling landscapes, hidden goodies, and fun momentum-based platforming? How about a zone completely linear in the most literal sense of the word? Yeah, unfortunately, by only the second level, Sonic the Hedgehog has already pissed the bed. Marble Zone is completely bereft of the multi-tiered level design Green Hill had, except for one bizarre alternative path in Act 3. I say bizarre because I didn't even know this shit existed until I was mucking around in this level taking notes. But also because it doesn't offer any substantial challenge or reward compared to the regular path, and takes about the exact same amount of time to get through before the two paths link up again anyway. Which is about 15 seconds, mind you. It literally comes down to, do you want a shield or 10 rings? Or whichever one's geometry is more fun to you. And in that case, yeah, I do prefer this one because you can do this. But I don't know, it's still a bit odd. Was it supposed to be the main route? I mean, it's so easy to overlook it that I have. For 19 years. Suffice to say, Marble Zone fumbles the exploration appeal that Green Hill had. I know, there's a couple sporadic hidden rooms with item boxes in them, but even they're not something you'll easily stumble upon yourself, rather something you come to know of just from sage knowledge. Flick through a magazine, hear it on the playground, call up the Sega Tips and Tricks hotline, probably the best cheats and tips in the world. This call may be recorded for quality assurance. So that's one thing, but check it. In Marble Zone, Sonic goes inside. Yeah, welcome to my world, bitch. And look at the geometry in here. You'll note that it's not exactly conducive to building up speed. There's no ramps to roll down, no inclines to clear. It is exclusively rudimentary blocky architecture. Physics opportunities have become basic block-riding platforming segments. It's generally agreed that the classic Sonic games are at their best when taking advantage of the unique mechanics the pinball-like physics engine affords it. In fact, for a lot of people, myself included, it's sort of become synonymous with the series itself. It's no wonder Marble Zone isn't an often celebrated zone when it completely shelves the elements that make the game stand out in the first place. It's not as if the kind of level design and weighting-based set pieces present in Marble don't work inherently, but they feel out of place in Sonic the Hedgehog. It's telling that the big defenders of this zone are quick to point out all the various ways you can skip them. Which are cool in their own right, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a great showcase of how Sonic's controls are so versatile that the player can exert their will over the level design, but I had a point. I thought I had a thing. I mean, riding along this floating platform, I'm half expecting a merman to jump out of the lava. If Green Hill was a roller coaster, then Marble Zone is one of those kiddie boat rides that your girlfriend wants to go on for some reason. And Labyrinth Zone is you falling into its moat and drowning. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. It might sound like I hate this level, but I actually don't. In fact, sometimes I kinda like it. When I play this game while taking hits off a fat blunted backward, I'm more than happy to switch my brain off and just sorta drift through it. Only joking, I don't even smoke weed. It's just under a critical lens, especially when you're judging its value as a Sonic level, it kinda falls apart a bit. Remember that spiel about the loop and the shoes and the extra life from Green Hill? Well, there's nothing, literally nothing like that in Marble Zone. It's not particularly fun to speedrun, there's none of the freeform exploration from Green Hill, and it makes you wait all the goddamn time. Even if I take my Adderall before I play, that always still pisses me off. Like I alluded to earlier, it feels like something ripped out of Castlevania, except without Castlevania's signature restrictive controls or genuinely challenging enemies. So within only 2 levels, this game has already given us an example of what kind of level Sonic is really built for, and one that feels like the complete antithesis of that. So what's going on? Well, apparently the developers had this idea of having zones like Marble Zone be the come down after the exhilarating thrill rides of Green Hill. Seems like a decent idea, and it's certainly mindful of the player, especially back in the late 80s when most people over the age of 20 didn't even know that Super Mario Bros. Had a fucking run button, but I don't need a whole level to act as a breather, guys. If it's all a bit too much for me, I'll pause the game, grab a cigarette, and put the kettle on. Maybe this is the same reason Sonic Unleashed sticks a 30-minute WillRock stage in between every push of the boost button. So as much as I think it was a flawed decision, it does at least shed some light on the level design of Marble Zone and why it's so different to Green Hill. What it doesn't explain is Springyard Zone, which is trying to arrange a marriage between the two. Springyard Act 1 brings back the high-speed sloping design of Green Hill and even introduces huge half-pipes, but also has marble-style slow block riding and cramped hallways, albeit now mercifully with rounded edges. The big difference here is that all of the marble-adjacent stuff is now relegated to a bottom pathway which is solely used as a failure state. You see, at the start of the act there's a high ledge that you can reach with skillful use of Sonic's physics. Well, as skillful as touching a spring and pressing down can get. Up here is an extra life in speed shoes, which, like the Green Hill example, can be used to fly over a tower off screen and land on the second of the Act's 2 paths. If you mess up any of the platform challenges up here, your punishment is falling down to the bottom path with no way to get back to the top one until the two intersect at the end of the act. Well, actually, you can press this switch to get a free ride back up to the top path, but I never realised this is what it does, so I doubt Joe Normie playing this shit for his Twitch stream is going to spot it either. Actually, this is probably the intended way to reach the top path in the first place. Look, either way, clearly the top is supposed to be the preferable route to the level. And this isn't a bad way to design a Sonic level, not at all, as we'll see in future games, but it does a little bit fly in the face of Green Hill's structure where both the top and bottom paths were more bountiful and skill-based. There's even one final secret at the end of the act where the two paths have linked back up, and there seems to be one final mandatory block riding section beyond a pit of red springs. But the devs placed a blink and you'll miss it ring monitor down here, and if you grab that you might also spot this yellow spring and a switch, which lets you bypass the blocks entirely and clear the act. The devs know that these are a boring pace breaker, but nonetheless forced them onto you in the previous zone. Act 2 more or less follows the same structure as Act 1, but Act 3 truly confounds me, and it's all because of this section. At this point you've been getting rewarded with power-ups, rings, and skipping boring set pieces by taking the upper route, but all of a sudden here the upper route leads you to 3 of these spikeball-laden half-pipes, with a slow block ride down into a section you would have immediately reached if you just kept going straight at the impasse, except you're down the 20 rings and shield you find along the way. What the fuck, Springyard? I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. Oh, grow up. You know what the bitch of it is, though? They were so close to having another one of those cracking little physics puzzle challenges, like with the Green Hill loop thing that I keep going on about. You see, during a huge half-pipe before this section, you can find these invincibility and speed shoes hidden in the wall. And if you're really quick, you can just about make it to the upper path and reach this final half-pipe, where you can run up the side and use the insane momentum to get some serious horizontal height to try and reach the top of the level like you can in Act 1. Unfortunately, no matter how many times I tried, I just couldn't launch myself high enough before the invincibility timed out and this cunt fucking spike ball would ruin everything. But you get so goddamn tantalizingly close. They could have loaded this platform with magic rings, extra lives, chaos emeralds, hookers, Jaeger bombs, some rock and a couple of needles, but no, they just had to build it a few fucking pixels too tall, and now I'll never see Sonic doing blow off a stripper's ass! Actually, I could probably find that on DeviantArt pretty easily. And then what else should happen as I go to record this than me immediately making it up here first try? But I mean, I don't see any prostitutes, so I think I still have a point, right? Aside from that, I actually do like Springyard Zone quite a bit. Its level design isn't as elaborate or thoughtful as Green Hills, but it's certainly a marked improvement over Marble Zone by letting you negotiate its more obnoxious stage elements. It also introduces these star bumpers, which are an obstacle that actually plays with Sonic's physics in a fun way and reinforces that pinball type of gameplay they were going for. How unfortunate it is then that the next zone, Labyrinth, is basically Marble Zone's older, fatter brother. I imagine this is supposed to be another one of those slower breather zones, but that's kinda hard when I spend most of it under the fucking water. Not only does it feature the same blocky, cramped interiors as Marble, but the sluggish water physics make what would otherwise be dull, "ooh, I hit a switch and a door opened" puzzle solving even more arduous. There's also the infamous drowning mechanic, which I think could actually be used pretty cleverly in theory, but ends up just hampering your progression by periodically making you wait around to huff one of Eggman's rancid toilet farts. Labyrinth Zone has got this reputation for being an incredibly hard zone, but I honestly don't think it's that bad. It's just the slower pace makes everything feel twice as punishing as before. In fact, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think it should be even harder. Take the start of Act 2 for example. There's this initial stretch of water with a couple of item boxes, rings and hazards, at the end of which there's a tunnel that funnels you into another pit of water with a red spring to launch you out of it. But during this section, the air pockets feel pretty haphazardly placed around with 6 of them lining a, 15-second chunk of gameplay. Like, what kind of anxious-ass motherfucker is going to make use of all of these? Playing through this part, I couldn't help but feel like removing all of them would have made for a more engaging challenge. From the moment you dipped into the water, you'd have to move as quickly as possible, prioritising which item boxes to break and which badniks to take care of as you scramble to make it to the spring in time. This would massively up the tension of being underwater as well as the relief of resurfacing again, and it increases the difficulty of the zone without relying on bullshit like this. You tend to forget how slow you're moving with that on-screen countdown and terrifying escalating drowning theme, and I genuinely think that being a lot less generous with the air pockets would have been a great way to make a slow-paced water level still have a frantic and exhilarating feel to it. Enemies and rotating spike hazards would turn from nuisances into actual threats. Normally getting hit would just be mildly frustrating, but overall a non-challenge. But now you're losing precious milliseconds that could be spent making it to the next air pocket. Now this would be a zone you'd need a fucking breather from. I don't know though, people already hate this level enough, so maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment. I enjoy playing or acting like a pet animal. Dog, cat, pony, oh yeah, clopping! There's also a shortcut in the first act that just kinda bothers me. It starts with you hitting this switch that opens up a gate next to it. You must then sacrifice a baby lamb and smother your genitals in its blood so that God will give you the power to read the mind of a 25-year-old Hirokazu Yasuhara, who will tell you that the switch has also made a tiny platform appear on the top of the body of water you're currently in. One tricky jump later and you're basically a short water ride away from the goal, which basically makes the rest of the act redundant. Hell, there's another one in Act 3 that's actually pretty easy to stumble upon yourself, but it's also just a brainless glide to the boss. I think a cooler way to structure Labyrinth Zone would have been to keep the long, slow underwater path to act as the main route, but then sprinkle hidden paths all over the place that would lead to sections where Sonic could actually build up some speed, as a reward for the player carefully examining the level design instead of just logging onto GameFAQs. And maybe they could even intersect and cross over and stuff, you know, like a labyrinth. It'd be a way to incorporate the multiple route design philosophy of Springyard and Green Hill without completely stripping Labyrinth of its identity. Hell, the geometry for this kind of thing already exists in the stage. And how many times does it show up?
Once.
It's like they're going, yeah, we could have made this level more fun. Anyway, make sure you swallow. If I can give Labyrinth any credit, it's home to my favourite boss encounter apart from the final one. I haven't really felt the need to go over the bosses since almost all of them are very basic and simple. Green Hill was just a matter of avoiding the wrecking ball and bopping Robotnik's head. Marble Zone is just waiting for him to swoop down while avoiding the lava. Springyard is waiting for him to pick up a platform, blah blah blah. Starlight Zone is the only one that really sticks out by having an alternative means of damaging Robotnik, as well as utilising a mechanic you learn to use in the preceding act, which is cool. But you know, it's still nothing that crazy. Labyrinth, on the other hand, doesn't even really have a boss fight. Instead, you chase Robotnik through a vertical platforming segment. I like that if you're fast enough, you can pretty much clear the entire thing before the water rises up and makes it super slow. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it's alright. Honestly, while the classic Sonic bosses are subject to what I think is pretty fair criticism, I still prefer it to the alternative. I mean, we've seen what more nuanced boss fights would look like in a classic Sonic game a few times, and they're fucking terrible! So Labyrinth is followed up with the penultimate zone in the game, Starlight Zone. This is a zone I find much harder to put a label on compared to others. While Green Hill and Springyard typically had 2 or 3 paths to take, each act of Starlight has 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 different ways to reach the goal, many of which intersect with each other at blink and you'll miss them junctions, with loads of small decisions being made by the player all throughout any given act. The common through line though is each route prioritising speed. Even the lowest sections can be adorned with sloping terrain and loop-de-loops returning from Green Hill, although I did notice how often the level design advertises the higher paths to you, with the middling routes all having an upward trajectory and constant opportunities to climb. This is reinforced by the bottom path being more dangerous than ever, hovering over bottomless pits and usually containing clusters of the zone's slower paced objects. In my opinion, Starlight Zone most closely resembles the design philosophies that would take precedence in Sonic 2. Although it should be noted that the lower paths aren't strictly treated as a failure state here. There's this great route through Act 2 where you're most likely rolling at great speeds down a hill. You then come to a steep incline, but not before you hear some of the floor break behind you. While you're launched into the air from the incline, you're given a second to decide whether you want to continue forward or head back to the collapsed floor. And if you choose the latter, you're immediately rewarded for your curiosity with another high speed section littered with rings. The first time around you'll probably shoot right past this ledge here, but replaying again and jumping to it will reveal a small room with a couple goodies and a spring that will shoot you to the upper path, where some platforming challenges will further lead you to 5 ring boxes, where you'll realise you've vertically scaled practically the entire level in only a couple seconds. This is probably the best act in the entire game, to be honest. Shugels posits in the first episode of his Sonic Spitball series that what makes classic Sonic gameplay work is the marriage of speed, platforming and exploration, and I can't think of a finer example of the three working in conjunction in this game than this. The clever interplay between paths and generous rewards for exploring honestly makes it feel more like Green Hill than Springyard, so you can kinda see why I have trouble categorizing this. Oh, for fuck's sake. And finally we reach the lair of Dr. Eggcock's, the Scrap Brain Zone. Obviously being the final zone, it's by far the toughest and most dangerous. Like Green Hill, Act 1 is segmented into 3 main pathways. All of them are tough in their own right, but the middle one is overall the smoothest sailing, albeit without many item boxes. The top route is, as you'd expect, pretty difficult to maintain but has plenty of rewards for doing so. What interests me the most though is the bottom path. It's far more treacherous than the other two, with some of the toughest and most oppressive obstacles in the entire game. Normally you'd want to avoid it, but seeing as it's the final zone, the game actually tempts you in with a trail of rings at the start. And despite how harsh it is, it's on average a faster way through the level than the other paths, and has a few ring boxes waiting at the end. Robotnik is basically saying,
See if you can make it through here, Sonic.
There's actually almost a rhythm to avoiding the traps down here, it makes it kind of fun to see how cleanly you can come out the other side. Plus these jumps are fun. Woo! Act 2 of Scrap Brain introduces another really fun interactive object, these spinning wheel things. Sonic can run all the way around them no problem, and lining up your jumps to avoid hazards or reach platforms with them feels great. They're intuitive enough that you always feel in control, but tricky enough that mistiming a jump can still send you in the wrong direction or directly into a hazard. This act is a bit similar to Springyard Act 1, where there's only really 2 ways through, a good route and a bad route. Except instead of them being the top and bottom of the level, you're instead funneled through 2 different obstacle courses, where the good in the good route comes from the lessened severity of the obstacles instead of having more free-form speed-based level design. Scrap Brain is not exactly a fast level. These tiny halls are crammed full of some of the most obnoxious enemies and hazards in the game. What I like though is that none of them feel explicitly cheap. It is very hard and you're probably going to get hit a lot, and the first time going through it's certainly going to feel unfair. But as you familiarise yourself with the zone, you start to figure out ways around all of it and get the timing down to make it through without a scratch. Alright, let's wrap up with Scrap Brain Act 3, which is our fourth act of Labyrinth Zone. Brilliant. Literally exactly how I wanted this game to end, actually. What's unique about this act compared to every other one in the game is that the level design leads you to the left instead of the right, and the exit is, unbeknownst to you, directly to your right. So the level design has this kind of circular structure, and as such the shorter routes have like a tighter radius, if you get what I mean, including the one that skips basically the entire act. Yeah, alright then, hey, why not just teleport me to the credits while you're at it? Switch off my Mega Drive, tell me to go learn how to ride a bike. Anyway, the final boss is actually pretty fun. You see, every boss up until this point has fallen flat for one crucial reason, the ring system. The fact that you're locked into a boss arena that makes it very easy to recollect your rings pretty much negates any threat Robotnik might pose. How does the final boss fix this? Well, you don't get any rings. This massively ramps up the tension in what is otherwise a fairly standard encounter. I always get annoyed when people complain about this while also criticising the other bosses for being too easy. Like, come on, at least be consistent in your bitching. It's like those arseholes that moan about being too hot all summer long and then a week into September are like, oh, it's too cold! Fuck you! Anyway, I did it. Even got the optional boop on him, that's important. And so Sonic runs home after freeing all the animals and uses the Chaos Emeralds to magic these ugly looking flowers into existence. Well done, Sonic the Hedgehog. Look at that Sonic, that's an awesome Sonic. You know, as I've been going through every zone like this, I've talked a lot about the level design, but I've been having trouble working in larger observations about the game itself, so let's try to sum up. Sonic 1 was marketed as a fast game. I mean, that was essentially the character's whole gimmick. He had tricks, gadgets, and speed. Wait, what? Gadgets? What fucking gadgets? What's he fucking talking about? Anyway, while Yuji Naka's engine obviously had the potential for huge amounts of speed, the game only really sparingly makes use of it. The word I would use to describe Sonic 1 instead of fast would be rhythmic. There's a rhythm to a lot of stuff you do in this game, even in the slower zones. Hell, especially in the slower zones. And you'll naturally begin to find it as you keep replaying. And make no mistake, these games were made to be replayed over and over. Hell, pretty much every game was back in the day. And playing this game cleanly almost puts me into a trance, and honestly ends up being similarly rewarding to maintaining the blistering pace you can build up in future games. It's part of the reason the ring system is so genius. It's punishing enough to disrupt your rhythm, but not so harsh as to become incredibly frustrating. If you lose your rings, it sucks, but you can find your pace again pretty quickly. And this is what I think makes Marble and Labyrinth kind of enjoyable for me despite all the problems I have with them. I'm in tune to their warts, I guess. Ugh, Jesus. Despite that, they are still pace breakers. Sonic 1 in general was a little inconsistent. Not in quality, I'd say, but just with what it's going for. A lot of the zone's ideologies end up colliding with each other. Springyard and Starlight are built on rewarding the player for navigating the higher routes with rings, power-ups, and speed opportunities, while Marble and Labyrinth Zone simply don't have these routes at all and focus more on bog-standard platforming fare, with any alternative progression being relegated to very 1-2 style shortcuts that slice huge chunks out of the level rather than being proper alternative paths. Green Hill is kind of the outlier in all of this, with both its top and bottom routes offering rewards for trickier gameplay, as well as just having a stronger overall cohesion between each pathway. You can kind of pick and choose where you want to go on the fly in Green Hill, a lot easier than you can in, say, Starlight. Considering Green Hill received revisions right up until the end and was clearly the zone they spent the most time polishing, I'm not sure if its design is indicative of what they wanted Sonic gameplay to be overall, or if its tendency to drop lots of rewards on its low paths as well as its top ones was instead a way to cushion the blow for less experienced players. Or perhaps it was to reward the more fundamental platforming skills a lot of people would have had around the time, while future levels reward understanding of Sonic's unique mechanics. When people describe each Sonic game's level design, they tend to throw out blanket statements about them that don't really respect the little niggles or differences among a respective game's set of zones. At least, that's the conclusion I've come to after taking a closer look at them all. I mean, keep in mind the optics surrounding this game. Like I've mentioned, there was nothing comparable to Sonic at the time, and it's very likely the developers themselves often found themselves at odds with how the game should be designed. Yuji Naka had basically shat gold and they didn't quite know what to do with it yet, and they certainly didn't want to flush it down the toilet. That's probably why some zones riff on traditional platformer design, while others demonstrate how the genre was about to evolve. It's almost as if the game was a testing ground for different design philosophies, in order to figure out what would work best for the series going forward. So, Sonic the Hedgehog busts a fat fucking nut prematurely and then goes pretty flaccid. And despite attempts to fluff itself back up, it never really becomes fully erect again. Wow, this is surely a fucking hilarious analogy. Anyway, with all that garbage out the way, I can finally talk about the game's story. So, here goes. Dr. Robotnica is catch-purring all the little animals and putting them into robots. Play as Sonic the Hedgehog and crush Dr. Robotnik! That's it. Well, I guess I can talk about the more thematic elements of the game. Yes, this is what my life has come to. Thematic elements of Sonic the Hedgehog. This has already been pretty well documented by every single human being that's walked this earth before me, but the environments in Sonic 1 get progressively more industrial as you go on. From the natural serene paradise that is Green Hill, to the flooded catacombs of an ancient civilization in Labyrinth, through the Greek ruins and candlelit caverns of Marble, all the way to the half-built cityscape of Starlight, then the brutalist, dilapidated smog of Springyard, and then finally the death trap urinal that is Scrap Brain. John, that's not the ordinary pin in the game. Well, it was gonna be! Until they realised putting Labyrinth second back-to-back with Marble was a fucking awful idea. The final stage order muddies the concept a bit, but nonetheless, this descent into industrial hell adds extra weight and context to Sonic's journey. It's overall not a necessary touch, but helps to colour the rich tapestry of South Island. I feel like I lifted that sentence out of Sparky's Sonic CD video, but I don't have 7 hours to go check. So... sorry? Anyway. You know, the Mushroom Kingdom is a set of video game levels that look like a world. Mobius is a world that you explore in a video game. Yeah, that's right, I said the M word. Feel free to pause and have a little cry in the bath. This kind of environmentalist message has unfortunately never been truly revisited by the series. Well, at least not with this amount of subtlety. That is, of course, apart from one huge example, but that's a subject for another video. Later games would build more vivid images of the world these characters inhabit, which is awesome, but it was never really to enhance the narrative, or in Sonic 1's case, even the gameplay. The way Scrap Brain feels like you're a rat in a cage compared to how freeing blasting through Green Hill is helps reinforce the damage Robotnik's influence is wreaking on the lands. To this end, I even like that Scrap Brain Act 3 is a Labyrinth retread, even though the real reason is that they just ran out of time. You see exactly what will happen to the rest of the island if you don't put an end to Eggman's schemes, with the limestone grottos becoming plated in metal and the water polluted with mega muck. It shows that there's still a chance to reverse all of this damage being done, you just need to get back up there and defeat the Mad Doctor. Even the graphics play into this, although I'm not sure if really on purpose. Zones like Springyard and Starlight are absolutely drab and muddy compared to the explosive colour and life present in Green Hill and even Labyrinth. That's kind of a double-edged sword though, for obvious reasons. When I say drab, I really do mean drab. Springyard, Starlight, Marble, and Scrap Brain just aren't very interesting to look at in my opinion. The game's colour palette overall feels noticeably more muted compared to later games in the series. I mean, Marble is all sickly green and pale lavender, it's like if Grandma's house had a torture dungeon. Even Sonic's blue is a little desaturated here, like someone squeezed all the juice out of him. And you know Sonic is all about that juice. Sally's juice, that is. Yep, this is a script I wrote at 5 in the morning, alright? I suppose I should talk about the soundtrack as well, right?
So ingrained in the hearts and minds of gamers worldwide, 'twas ever thus and thus shall always be.
I don't know, I like the arrangements, but I don't ever find myself really seeking the original tracks out to listen to in my own time. And it's not like I can comment on the actual composition or music techniques or anything. I spent music class holed up in cramped recording rooms smacking guitars together with my friends. We were total badasses. As far as version recommendations go, I've been playing and recording from the Genesis version just so I could make sure all my observations were relevant to the original release. But if you're playing for the first time or just haven't played in a while, I'd wholeheartedly recommend the Christian Whitehead port, which is available on Sonic Origins, or could be played through Sonic 1 Forever, which is a fan port of the mobile version with a bunch of added bells and whistles. I actually like casually playing through this game a lot as Tails because his flying can negate some of the boring sections in Marble Zone. I would avoid using the spin dash though, because while it does have some utility here and there, the game wasn't designed with it in mind. There are a lot of contrarian weirdos nowadays that act like Origins or even Forever aren't valid ways to play the game, but trust me, unless you have stage 4 autism, it doesn't fucking matter. Yes, it's true, not everything is absolutely one-to-one with the original, but the widescreen frame rate improvements and removal of the speed caps does wonders for the game's accessibility, so get the fuck off the phone app and order at the bar, you frail fucking wimp. Alright, that probably about does it for the first game. Moving on to Sonic the Hedgehog 2, hang on, this shit's gone on for over 40 minutes. If I speak for a similar duration about the other games, this fucking video is gonna end up running like 4.5 hours or something. Yeah, so I originally planned to make this a more brief overview of the entire classic series, but then I started writing for Sonic 1, and then I kept writing, and kept writing, and kept writing, and shit my pants, and kept writing. So I figure it's a better idea to split them up into separate uploads. So join me for Sonic 2, next time, or never. I don't know if I'll make it. Maybe I'll stop caring. Or get murked on the way to the gym, or just blast my shit off after another failed job interview. Apparently I've forgotten how to win videos. Install Vikings War of Clans now and get 200 gold.